Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo, and it looks like it's a guys' night tonight because it's just me and Brian tonight. And Brian, good to see you here, if somewhat soggy.
Just a tad.
Just out of curiosity, is that canoe out in the studio parking lot yours?
No, I have the kayak next to it.
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't know whose canoe that is. But no, on all more serious note, I hope everyone down in the Houston and Southern Texas area, they're doing fine. And a lot of I'm feeling for you guys because there's a lot of flooding going on. I know people have been dispersed, homes have been destroyed, and objects lost. There was an absolute terrible storm that hit. And
so, like, now what exactly has been going on? Because I haven't been able to follow it because this weekend, but like as I understand it, the storm came up and then like passed everybody by, and then hit like a high pressure system, came back and was like, here's something I missed, and then just took the whole east coast of Texas to Pound Town.
A little bit. So the way the Hurricane Harvey came up and it built strength as it was coming up through the Gulf, and then hit landfall at about, they say a category 4. And then, so I think most of the power was lost in that first initial landfall hit. It then went back out into the Gulf, but then turned back up to the coastline, hitting Houston, and it's been sitting on Houston for several days now, slowly losing power, losing rain, and dissipating as it moves up into the more central statehood now through Louisiana and probably up into Alabama and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of it sort of happened. And as such, now Houston, people don't realize, is a coastal city. It has a bay right next to it. And the rain just overtook a lot of the dams and stuff like that, leading to a loss of flooding. I've got, a former manager over there. He's doing fine, I found out. And then I have a lot of people who work with the same company as me. They're unfortunately, out of work currently because they had to shut down and the flooding has usually taken over. So I hope everyone's doing better. I hope everyone, gets better and makes through this. Texas people, I've noticed, are very, very strong-willed, very chipper. This is an awful tragedy, but I believe they can I believe more than enough that they can make through this.
Okay. All right. Good to hear. We do hope that everybody down in the general Houston area is safe, and we feel for you guys. We're gonna include some links to some charities that people can donate to if they want to send some relief money to the people who are currently getting bent over by Hurricane Harvey. Do you know how much longer Harvey's supposed to be in town for, or is he just becoming the thing that would not leave?
He became the thing that would not leave. I think finally he's getting out of here, hopefully in the next couple of days. And by that point, they can hopefully start working on trying to get the water to recede, and then moving in for the hardest part of any sort of hurricane or any sort of tragedy like that is the repairing of not only just homes but also lives.
Oh God, yeah. Because the thing is, like I'm up here in Maryland, and we had a really big hurricane / flood in, I want to say 2003, 2004, and like the thing that people don't tend to realize about flooding is that once the flooding is over and you can start getting on the repairing, it's not just a matter of just bailing out all the water and changing out the carpet and putting new paint on the walls. No, you've got to strip those buildings down to the rebar and redo all the drywalling and the masonry work. Otherwise, completely put down a new foundation. Otherwise, you're going to get mold and fungus and stuff, and the structural integrity is not going to hold up. And flood damage is pretty much the worst damage you can deal with. So,
Indeed.
Yeah. So, like I said, we hope that everybody down there in the Houston area is all right, and we hope that you guys bounce back as quick as you possibly can. So, yeah, we feel for you guys. So, but on to other, lighter topics to try and brighten the mood now that we just severely brought it down.
It's what I do? Question mark?
Yeah, Brian, Jesus, you just had to bring everybody down. We were all having a good time until you came in.
Yeah, it happens.
So anyway, we got kind of we had a plan for a show tonight, and then we kind of had to bail on it because the people that we need aren't here. So we're kind of winging it tonight. So here's we hope to provide you with a good show. So we got some topics that we want to talk about and have some fun with. So, but first we are going to begin as always with Ask a Geek. All right. So our first question here, this one's from Charlie, and he's got a couple questions. First one here is for Brian, and he asks you, Brian, what do you think is the best decade for comics so far?
So far, I mean, there's been quite a lot, but I want to say probably the best decade might be around, I would say, the 1970s towards the 1980s. Way I think of it, because I'm also superhero bias. That's when a lot of the superheroes sort of came up and around a lot of like Silver Age Marvel and stuff like that, and moving actually closer and more into the Bronze Age at that point, because it was after a lot of the other comic books, the horror series, the crime series, they unfortunately all got canceled, mainly due to the interference of the government and so forth, the whole seduction of the innocent. But the companies then jumped on board with superheroes and it was able to climb up and keep itself afloat and actually building itself out. So, and that's when you saw a lot of characters getting introduced or reintroduced, a lot of different storylines being brought together. And again, I'm always going to be talking about superheroes because that's where I fall under the line of everything. I know they're actually starting to do a big collection, a lot of Bronze Age stuff now, which is closer to the 80s. So we're still in the Silver Age area where everything was a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more fun and a bit more insane because they didn't have a lot of the overarching I would say the overarching like storylines going on. So that would be my selection for like the best era of comics, because everyone still had it. They were able to sell off the like newsstands. Things were going up for everyone. In the next couple of years, things started to have a downturn, especially towards late 80s and 90s. So that 70s to 80s area is the best area I feel like for comic books.
Okay. All right. Cool. And now you mentioned that you were only talking about superheroes. Do you just not read a whole lot of indie comics, or is it just non-superhero stuff in general?
I do read some non-superhero stuff. I'm starting to read those more now, I think, just because of my attitude. But yeah, I've always sort of told people, like, when I read comics, I just usually mean superheroes. That's what caught my attention. That's what kept me reading and kept me going. I knew other things existed. I knew other different stories, independent stories and things like that were happening. They just never caught my eye at the time. Now, if you look back, that means I missed a lot of good things, and you play the game of catch up, and that's where trade paperbacks come into play. But it was just me, like as a kid, and like superheroes that just got me, hooked me in, and I've never left them.
And he's got a second question here from me, and he's giving me a bit more of a narrower time frame to work with, but he wants to know what I think the best best year for video gaming was. And that's a hell of a question. Like, because the question now is like, you ask me that kind of questions like, well, okay, do you mean like what was like the best year as far as releases, or are we talking like a really good year is like when technology really advanced in some way, or something really new and mind blowing came out? So that's kind of now I'm like, okay, what do you define the question? So I'm going to make it easy on myself and say what would be, well, it's not going to make it much easier. What would be, I think, the best year pound for pound as far as game releases? A year that we just had like just a really knockout year for game releases. And I'm still going to have to go to my old standby of 1997 because that was just a really just gangbusters year as far as stuff coming out. You got Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII. America had either just gotten Pokemon or we'd had it for a few months at that point. I actually think Pokemon came out, I think, the tail end of 1996. Castlevania Symphony of the Night came out. You had just 1997 was just a really packed year as far as AAA, as far as just really like gold standard game releases.
Not to mention, I think that was also the same year as GoldenEye on the N64 and Star Fox 64.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Star Fox 64 came out in 1997. That was another really big one. I think, yeah, GoldenEye 007 came out the same year. So, yeah, 1997 was just packed. Years that end in 7 or are multiples of 7 tend to be really big, because 1997 was a really big year. So 2007 was a really big year. 2014 release-wise was also, I remember, being a really good year. When I can talk about the great unpleasantness. And then I'll tell you what, as shit as 2016 was for everything else in the world, 2016 was actually a really good year for video games. We got Doom. We got we started to see sort of things really grow as far as VR in 2016. We got a whole bunch of really good shit in 2016. I can't remember all of it off the top of my head, but I'd say my old standby for best year so far in gaming, I'm gonna have to go back to 1997. I've yet to have a year really top 1997 as far as just how packed it was, as far as really just defining releases. And then he's got a third question here. And I'm going to open this one up to you, Brian, because this is one that I think we can both comment on. But the question is, we've gotten questions before. Oh, what's a comic book that you think would make a good video game? But this one's coming from the other direction. He's asking, what is a video game series that we think would make a good ongoing comic? So I'll let you open up on this one, Brian.
It's an interesting question, because I feel like, video game adaptations to comics has a better, I would say, quality win ratio than video games to movies. But I know this. I remember when I was late to the boat for the Mass Effect series, and I remember they became a comic, and I've been trying to find those comics now, because I fell in love with that series. I was always wondering if they were going to do the same thing with Dragon Age, like if they were going to make a Dragon Age kind of style comic. They never did. I'm wondering if that would be something they can kind of try out. Though Dragon Age, I don't think has picked up in terms of popularity as Mass Effect has. So I would start with Dragon Age and move from there, which is so odd because Dynamite right now is making like Atari comics.
Well, didn't we have a brief falling out when you didn't tell me that like Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights had a comic series, and I got really mad at you for not telling me that?
Well, yeah, because there was a D&D comic. I'm not sure they're still making the D&D comic, but yeah, they had made something like that. We have fallen out like every week. I can't keep track of that. Why didn't you tell me this? I don't know. I didn't know you would be interested.
There was a comic book series that I found out about last year that was based on one of the older BioWare games, and I think it was Baldur's Gate, because I remember one of the covers had Minsk and Boo, and I was like really excited. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your answer.
No, that's fine. I was actually researching. I think there was in fact a Dragon Age comic. I don't know who made it though. Maybe like people online. Good for them.
My thing would be, if you're going to do a comic adaptation of a video game, do one that you can tell a story beyond just what is included in the scope of the game. Because I've said before, the best game worlds to me are the ones where it feels like there's more beyond what we're seeing in the game. Like Elder Scrolls is a great example of this. It's very easy for me to believe that there's, when I play Skyrim, it's very easy for me to believe that there's more beyond just what I'm seeing in the game, that there are other provinces of Morrowind and Cyrodiil, mostly because they've already had games made about those provinces. But the world is just so fleshed out, it's very easy to believe that there's more beyond just what I'm seeing in the game. Same thing with, say, like Mass Effect. I have to believe that there's more beyond what I'm seeing. So I would say, if you're going to do a comic book adaptation of a video game, don't just do a straight adaptation of the game's characters. Pick a game that has an expansive universe and tell original stories in that universe. I'll tell you one that I think would have made a really good would make a really good ongoing, and that's a Pokemon comic, because we've already got like an ongoing manga, the Pokemon Special series that's based off the game events. But I think it'd be really cool to see an ongoing based around some original characters, some new characters set in the Pokemon universe that maybe aren't necessarily doing the whole, traveling around fighting the 8 gyms and having to become and trying to become the champion arc that we've seen so many times before.
Well, and you can use, like, I think that's why I kind of like the Mass Effect series, is that they weren't, carbon copies of the game. They were world building almost, Yes, these characters will show up, but here's other adventures and other characters and things like that. You get to expand out on the mythology and the mythos and really work around it.
And let's see. I know that I think it was Marvel. They had a Halo comic series running for a while that was doing really good.
I don't think it was Marvel. I actually think that was Vertigo.
Was it Vertigo?
Or just actually it could have. No, it might have been Wildstorm actually. No, I was wrong again. Man, I've been wrong 3 times already. It was Dark Horse. Not even remotely close to any of those other companies.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've seen comic book adaptations of games before. Like, I remember the Resident Evil one that Wildstorm did back in like the late 90s. It was, pretty crap. Then there was the Gears of War one in the early 2000s, which again, wasn't all that great, because again, it was just treading ground that we'd already seen in the video games. So I would say if you're gonna do a comic adaptation based off a video game property, don't just retread the same ground that we see in the games. Do something, outside of it. Show us new stories. Oh God, there was one that I had heard was really good, and I think Brian, you actually mentioned it once or twice, but I can't remember what it was. Oh shit!
Was it the Street Fighter series? Because that kind of goes from really cool to crap very quickly.
That's almost the exception that proves the rule, because it's a comic book series that basically just retreads the same ground as the games over and over again. Coming up with all these excuses for these characters to fight each other, but at the same time, it's been running for more than a decade. So it's like they've got to be doing something right.
something right is happening somewhere.
You got the Street Fighter one, and then the same company also does a Darkstalkers one, don't they?
They just launched it, but they're also doing Street Fighters versus Darkstalkers right now. I think that was Udon. Yeah,
Udon.
So they're basically like, all right, we have these characters. Well, why don't they fight each other? Like that's a great idea. You're getting a raise. Everyone else in the room was like, what? That's all we're going to do. It's a fighting game.
Man, we've spent a lot of time on this question. Next question here comes from Erica, and it's for all of us. And she asks, what is a fictional sport that we would love to play in real life? Ooh. So I'm going to disqualify Quidditch, because I know that's probably the first one that we're both going to jump to. So outside of Quidditch, what is a fictional sport that you'd like to play?
Oh, I don't really know. Like what are some fictional sports outside of Quidditch? Wow. Like I don't really know. To be honest with you. I think the question is, what are other because Quidditch, because Harry Potter just takes something up. Do you have something for this? Because I am struggling to think of like a fictional sport.
I tell you what, I've never played the game myself because I'm not all that enthusiastic about it. But I would if you told me that there was an actual league for this sport in real life, I would be buying season passes every fucking year, and that's Rocket League. Which is no shit. It's soccer with monster trucks.
Oh yeah, I was just cars in general. No, that's actually that's a good one though. As long as if you blow up, you get the respawn.
Yeah.
And physics doesn't work properly.
Like that would make soccer fun and actually interesting and worth watching. As I piss off our entire European listener base.
Right. Well, they're already pissing off at you because you call it soccer.
Skyblaze is going to come back next week. She's like, Gunzo, I want to talk to you about your derogatory remarks towards football.
And I'm gonna be like, what about football? Not that football. Oh, sorry.
Okay, what about you? A fictional sport that you'd either want to play or want to see?
It's stupid, and I am pulling probably one of the more obscure things out from these two creators. Do you remember Matt Stone and Trey Parker's basketball movie?
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm pretty sure there's a law against mentioning that movie.
Really? There's a law against mentioning basketball?
Like, that movie was awful.
No, I didn't say it was a good movie.
That movie was awful. Like, I'm pretty sure you've got to pay a fine now.
What? Since when? I don't remember this. If I knew that, maybe I wouldn't have mentioned it. I don't know. But no, like, that's the only other thing that's coming up in my head about a fictional sport that I would like, just because it seems so absolutely ridiculous. Basketball and baseball mixed together. Where like one of the whole purposes of it is to freak out the guy trying to take the shot.
I'll tell you, kind of on the same lines. This is something that's been floating around on Facebook for the last week or so. But have you seen this thing going around about a multi-level Mario Kart style park?
I saw that. I thought it was fake, so I didn't believe it. Is that actually happening?
Apparently, yeah. I don't know if it's actually going to be officially tied into Mario Kart, but it's like this company is building this go-kart park where all the tracks have like multiple levels and they're going to like weave in and out of each other. And I think that's just so fucking awesome. Like, why did nobody think of that before?
Go-kart places probably don't make that much money.
So yeah, I'm going on a road that, I'll tell you what, that would be something I want to see, like real world Mario. Like you were with like actually people throwing shells and banana peels and shit and actually having it work like it would in the game.
That seems so dangerous for both the driver and the spectator.
Tell me that all the NASCAR viewers in the world would not immediately jump ship to watch an American Mario Kart League.
I see no reason why not. I mean, yeah, I would see no reason why not. They would not be like, that looks way more fun.
So, I would love to see that. Yeah. So, okay. And let's see here now. Okay. This next question is for me, and it is from Paula. And she asks what I think of the recent developments in Transformers comics. To which I say, I have a lot of catching up to do. Because apparently Megatron's a good guy now.
He's an Autobot, but good is a relative term. He's
yeah,
like chaotic. He's like chaotic good.
But it's like the whole reason I initially first found out about this was actually kind of funny that this question came in, but because we were just talking about this before the show. I've got a coworker who reads the Transformers comics, and he came in with a trade paperback on Sunday during one of our slow days, and he was reading it. And I'm just walking around. I was like, oh, yeah, good to see that the IDW Transformers ongoing and still going. And it's like, yeah, they've got like 2 or 3 titles now, and one of them, Megatron's a good guy. And I was like, I'm sorry, once more in my good ear? So, yeah, I'm going to have to look that up because apparently not only is Megatron a semi-good guy, but he's actually being written really well.
They write him when he sort of changed face. They're writing him very philosophical. Which is actually kind of cool because whenever Megatron gets philosophical, he gets really, really cool. I saw that both in Prime and Beast Wars.
Yeah, we had this discussion back when Transformers Prime was going, and in the penultimate episode where Megatron was trying to convince Ratchet to help him revive Cybertron with Dark Energon, and we were talking about how like that was the best written Megatron had ever been because he was so philosophical and so convincing with his argument.
Yeah, and not a shot was fired that entire episode. Not a one. And it ended and everyone was like, oh, I want to see more.
And then the next episode was the last episode. We were like, damn you.
Yeah, well, that's the unfortunate turn of events of any sort of animated show.
So I've got a lot of catching up to do. And then she also asks if I've been keeping up with Transformers Robots in Disguise, the cartoon show. And no, after Transformers Prime ended, I have not watched the current Transformers show. Have you heard anything about it, Brian?
I tried to, but the problem is that I couldn't. They made it seem like it was supposed to be a continuation, but it's written in such a way that it looks like it's a brand new show, and that was really confusing for like a lot of the episodes.
Yeah, it is actually a continuation Transformers Prime. But again, like the way they write it and the way that they tell the story, it does feel like almost like a very loose connection. Like I just caught one episode just at random because I tried watching it on Netflix when they had the first season, and I stopped after 3 episodes because like the thing is like I tried watching it immediately after watching Transformers Prime, so I was like, okay, I can't reconcile these 2 shows. And I caught a recent episode randomly on television, and it was one where Bumblebee had a space bridge accident. He was stuck in like an in-between dimension, and he was like, okay, so when this happened to Raph, Miko, and Jack, how did they handle this? And I'm like, wow, okay, I forgot those characters existed.
Yeah, for the longest period of time, I thought the show forgot those characters existed, because I feel like the moment he comes back to Earth, he's like, maybe I should go contact my old friend.
See, that was the thing.
And that's where the disconnect for me happened.
Yeah, that's where the whole thing broke down with me. It's like the thing is like when they in the first episode when they appear on Earth, they're like, okay, all right, we're on Earth, and okay, how are we going to do this? We don't know what to do. We don't know how to adjust to this. Meanwhile, Bumblebee should be like, okay, guys, we're here. This planet's called Earth. I've been here before. I got this. Call up Agent Fowler on speed dial. Just like, hey, bunch of Autobots are stuck here. You know, by the way, how's Raph doing? Okay, that should have been the immediate reaction. Instead, they're off hiding in a junkyard with, you know, this dude and his son.
With the new kid character that the kids are supposed to respond to. Yeah.
And like, and another thing is like, you know, the humans are reacting like you've never seen a Transformer before. Meanwhile, Transformers Prime, there was a point where the fucking federal government was in a state of crisis because Megatron had taken over all of Nevada.
Yeah. So when you do that, like the disconnect to me was like I cannot follow because you're telling me one thing but you're showing me something else.
Yeah, like I'm having that moment that Smith had at the end of his first Dalek episode, which is like, you're not recognizing these things, and you should, because they were all over the fucking news.
Right. It's like, don't you remember this? No.
This is not your first time seeing this.
You guys get invaded on a yearly basis at Christmas. Yeah, so that's an unfortunate. I haven't kept up since, and I think last I heard they went a little bit combiner crazy. Where like everyone's apparently a combiner, and I was like, the cool thing about combiners is that it was a team, not that everyone could do it.
Yeah, apparently in the comics, there's now this MacGuffin where like it can actually create combiners out of pre-existing Transformers, and apparently Optimus Prime is part of a combiner team now.
Well, that one, I don't possibly. I remember it was called Combiner Wars. I was kind of following it, but I didn't quite like what they were doing with it. Like just because they were changing a lot of concepts, and I was like, change bad. I will hide to my nostalgia.
So that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com, or you can drop them in the YouTube comments. Get your questions in. We love hearing from you guys. Love reading your questions on the air. So yeah, get those questions in. And so with that, we're kind of, like I said, because the original plan that we had kind of fell through, we're kind of winging it this episode. So we're doing a few kind of a mini scenes from a hat here. So I guess the first thing that really is worth talking about is something that I've actually wanted to bring up to Brian as a random topic of the week this week. And that is this week it was Jack Kirby's 100th birthday.
Indeed. He'll be 100. He would have been 100 this year if he had not unfortunately passed. But yeah, Jack Kirby, as I was always call him, and you should always mention him as this, he's Jack, the King of Comics Kirby.
And you write that shit in capitals, son.
Yes, it's in stone. It's chiseled on every apartment I live in. This is why I don't get my deposits back.
So Jack Kirby, like you've mentioned on the show many times that he is like your number one idol as far as comics writing goes. So what is it about Jack Kirby and his writing that caused him to have such impact with comic books?
It was not just his writing, it's also his artwork as well. But the impact is felt to today because in It's a Wonderful Life scenario, without Jack Kirby, we would not have we wouldn't have the Marvel Universe at all as it stands currently right now, because he was one of the instruments behind creating a lot of those characters. But it was also mainly because not only was his art fantastic, because his art would lead into the storytelling, he would always think of just a little bit ahead of everyone. If that makes a little bit of sense, like the whole concept of the Fantastic Four, when you explain it out on paper, sounds kind of silly. A family goes into space, get hit with cosmic rays. One turns into a rock monster. The other one goes on fire. The girl becomes invisible, and that dude is stretchy. When you say it out loud, like, well, it seems like a silly concept. And Jack went, yes, it is. That's why it works. That was a lot of his mandate behind it. Like, silly or not, or weird or kooky or whatever, it works, and I will make it work. Fantastic Four is one of the first ones I always like to go to because of that sort of dynamic. And he built basically a superhero family. At the time, a lot of superheroes were just, their individual personalities, or they had like a sidekick. This was a family. It was a husband, a wife, a brother, and like the guy's best friend. And so you got to see a different dynamic from that. They could get the build on that. And so they get to expand a little bit more and not just having, hero sidekick, have a family going and working together to save the world, save the universe. And a lot of it with science. Yeah, sure, Ben Grimm would punch stuff, but he always had Mr. Fantastic doing some sort of ridiculous, attribute, some sort of ridiculous machine to help work things out. He helped bring about the Hulk being a character where he gets angry, he becomes a different sort of creature monster. A very sort of doctor, it was just a play on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's an old concept, but with him, and I'll give credit where credit's due, Stan Lee did help out with this. He was the writer for a lot of this. Just were able to take an old concept and bring it again with new life.
So Kirby pretty much set the visual tone for Marvel Comics, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. Not visual, the working outside of the boundaries a little bit. And then once he's, and one of his more off the wall ones was obviously Galactus and Silver Surfer. So that's where you get the more cosmic elements of it. And when he moved over to DC after working for so long at Marvel, he was feeling a bit rejected. He started up the Fourth World, where you got to see really amazing work that he would done. Because again, he's taken a pantheon of the whole concept of new gods. We've had gods forever, right? We have gods since the beginning of civilization, but here are like new gods and dark side, and this whole saga building up with that. And he was allowed to go crazy with his art. He has, like, here's one of the coolest things in the world. There's an art technique that's named after him. It's called the Kirby crackle.
Really?
He would, whenever he would do like sort of energy like stuff, if you kind of see it, there'll be these, brightly colored with kind of black circles within them. They're called the Kirby crackle because he invented how that looked, and other people have been using it ever since. So, like, how cool is it just to have something named after yourself like that?
Neat.
Yeah. I don't have an art way of doing that. Which is so weird because his actually when you see this, I actually have a book of some of his early work when he was working with Joe Simon in the Joe Simon studio. And it was all like just weird, not weird, but like they were like young romance novels and westerns and stuff like that. Very down to earth stories. Not bad, really cool stuff. But it was only when he started working with superheroes that we really see the talent come into play. Also, if you can ever get your hand on his version of the 2001 A Space Odyssey comic, it's fantastic because the first issue is just the movie, and the rest of the issues is Jack Kirby going insane, and I love every moment of it.
So if you could point to one thing that would define Jack Kirby as a creator, what would it be? Like, what's the thing that, like, like Walt Disney has Mickey Mouse, Shigeru Miyamoto has Super Mario. What's the one thing that you would say defines Jack Kirby?
As of right now, I think the best defining aspect of Jack Kirby is, at least a lot of things that I picture when I first say his name, will be Darkseid. This Machiavellian intergalactic villain. Like, it is just so, a really good concept of what he is, the conqueror of worlds, slaver, and stuff like that, but doesn't actually do a lot of the punching. He's more methodical. He's got his omega beams. He uses his eye things. That's really all he does. And like that to me is where I would say like that's Jack sort of Kirby. I realize I'm pointing out to a villain, but whenever I see his name or see it, that's sort of the first thing that pops up is Darkseid's like face and head. And like that's really what I would go for with that. They've actually this year will be re-releasing the Fourth World Omnibus later this year, which is going to collect all of his like New God stuff. If you have the money, because it's going to be expensive, I'm not going to lie to you. There is not an omnibus that isn't. I would definitely try to pick that up. There are several different books of other omnibuses books that he's worked with his writings of Marvel, his writings of DC. Definitely try to pick those up. If you can find there's something called the Jack Kirby Joe Simon Studio art book. Definitely need to pick that up as well, because that shows a lot of his early work before he even started with some of the superhero stuff. I mean, it's just sort of amazing. I'm very biased with Jack Kirby. I call him the King of Comics for a reason, and I just get a little sad when he doesn't get mentioned more often, just because there's so much he has done. Like, we wouldn't be where we are without him. I mentioned that already earlier, and I'll sound like a broken record if I have to. I really feel like he should get a credit in front of the Marvel movies, not necessarily in the back. I'm glad he gets a credit. I'm absolutely proud he gets a credit, but I feel like he should get a credit in the front, not necessarily at the end. And his work is constantly being recognized in the comic book world. I just want a little bit more mainstream. Earlier this year, I believe Disney actually did induct him into one of their like halls of fames, and that's a great first step for him, is to get him to be known. And I have so many things about him. There's so fun. There's a lot of like little like trivia things that he's a part of now, and every sort of aspect of different areas and different pulp culture things. A good example would be that when they were thinking about making another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie after the third one, and like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, basically, they were going to have an evil Ninja Turtle, and it was going to be named Kirby, because they were following along with the artists' names. And I just thought that is the coolest thing ever,
that reminds me of when I was a kid, there was a series of storybooks based off the TMNT, the cartoon show, the 1987 cartoon. And there was one, and I think it was based on an episode actually, where Donatello met a comic book artist who, because of some weird crystal that he had, everything he drew would come to life in this other dimension, and they wound up getting stuck in that other dimension, and they weren't able to escape. And basically what happened was all the creations of this artist had drawn battle lines, were fighting a war, and they couldn't leave until Kirby, the artist, who was named Kirby, came up with something that could end the war. Was that supposed to be a send-up of Jack Kirby?
Absolutely. There's so many send-up. There's so many times he's shown up in things like that. He, at one point in time, the Fantastic Four met God, and God was Jack Kirby. Like, and they named him as such. Superman, the animated series, the police detective, that was, I think, Dan Turpin, was actually he was modeled after Kirby. And if anyone remembers the episode where Dan dies, there's a funeral scene. There's actually two funeral scenes. One funeral scene is just, I think, it was the one that got aired because they couldn't get the other one on air. But the second one that couldn't get on air is that they had, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It was, everyone was standing around this Kirby grave, and in the background were Kirby characters, not necessarily from DC, but other characters also like mourning his death. And like you just feel it right in your heartstrings. So
Now, if one were to go on YouTube, would one be able to find this funeral scene?
I'm wondering. I don't know if it ever got released. I know I saw a picture of it. I know there's a picture of it somewhere. But hopefully it's not like a weird urban legend I'm spreading them out. But yeah, it's just a lot of different things like that. It was, and that was also like, that was dedicated to Jack Kirby. He's been mentioned in jazz CDs. There's a jazz CD called, The Requiem for Jack Kirby. It's just amazing how like one person in any sort of industry has this much going, like this much love and appreciation behind him. And that's, I'm kind of glad we get to talk about that, because like I said, I want Jack Kirby to be a household name right next to Stanley.
Okay, so why do you think Jack Kirby, not to take this to a negative area, but why do you think Jack Kirby isn't as well known as Stan Lee? Do you think it's just because he wasn't as what's the word I'm looking for, as ready to stand in the spotlight as Stan Lee was?
No,
or are we looking at kind of another Batman and Bill situation here?
It's kind of like Batman and Bill, but there's differences behind this. Is that Jack Kirby always got credit when credit was due, absolutely. But, and again, I don't want to see. I want to try to keep it positive, and I don't want to shit on anyone. But Stan Lee is a businessman. Yes, he's a comic book writer, but he's also a businessman, and he's a very good businessman most of the time. There's other stories where he's not, but
Cinderella.
So he became so basically when they would work together, it would be Stan who would stand up and talk about it, and he would talk to the press about it, and the press got behind him, and so he became the face of Marvel. And when a situation like that happens, the opposite person, because Jack wasn't not like, I wouldn't call Jack Kirby a quiet person. He's the guy who when Nazis showed up, he's like, oh, fuck it, I'll beat the crap out of them. Everyone's like, all right, we're gone. Because he fought in World War II. So he wasn't like a quiet person, but Stan was more of the marketing guy. He's the business guy. He would schmooze and he would talk. And eventually the spotlight was more on him than it was on Jack. And that's why Jack left Marvel at first, because he was feeling underappreciated. He had a falling out with Stan. So much so Jack made a character, a kind of a sleazy business character based on Stan in some of his books. So that's what happened is just Stan sort of took the spotlight onto him, and Marvel really didn't help by constantly pushing Stan into the spotlight as well whenever like anything would happen or anything that needs to happen. And Jack just unfortunately fell by the wayside. And Jack, Mr. Jack King Kirby, he died about 1994, I want to say, without really seeing where a lot of his creations are going to, or what they've sort of become now, movie franchises and stuff.
Although in the case of the Fantastic Four movies, that might actually be a good thing.
That's probably a very good point there. At least the most recent one. Here's a side note. Isn't it weird when a movie comes out and it's bad, but it was also a bad movie before, but that second movie's so bad it makes the first movie look good? Because if I was in a hostage situation and said you have to watch the new Fantastic Four or the first Fantastic Four, I was like, ooh, do you have the Roger Corman?
Well,
no one's going to get that joke.
What do you think? What do you think Mr. Kirby would have to say about all these comic book movies that have been coming out lately?
I think as long as they would try to stay close to whatever the spirit that he helped influence it at, I think he would have no real problems with it. I don't want to put words in the guy's mouth. I really don't know.
Well, thou shalt not speak for the Lord.
Exactly. There you go. So, but I would like to think that, maybe he would be upset. Like he would go it needs to be crazier. You need to really go off the wall here. You're like, yeah. It's like we need some more color over here, put some more crackles over there. I really don't know. I think it would just depend on how well the character was treated.
Okay.
I would say he was because when he died in '94, they hadn't really made that many movies, and a lot of the early Marvel stuff that were movies weren't very good. So you never know. He could have had a change of heart. He could have been cameoing alongside Stan Lee.
Alrighty. Okay. So all right. So that's kind of our nice little tribute to Jack Kirby. And while discussing the passing of a legend, Brian, you came up with something actually as we were talking before the show got started that about another legend that's maybe not so much passing from this world, but is definitely changing hands in a very literal sense.
Oh, so how to begin? This is actually a little bit of an older story. I think slipped by us for a while because I think what was happening, a lot of things were happening.
Well, the thing is, like, we didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah. So there's a new Kermit the Frog. So
you just rip that Band-Aid right off. No lead up. There's a new Kermit.
You've just got to start. That's the only way you can do it in this situation. There's a new Kermit the Frog. There was a new puppeteer. So the best way to explain this is actually this happened earlier this year, but even dates back to sometime even like last October, where the Muppeteer of Kermit the Frog, Steve Whitmire,
I think.
Whitmire, who had been voicing and being the puppeteer for Kermit the Frog since Jim Henson passed away, got fired from the Muppet Studios, which is currently owned by Disney. And it sort of came out for everyone else. It came out of the blue, like, oh, what? How can they fire him? What? That's bad. We sort of already immediately sided with the actor. And then some news came out about said actor that made everyone not sure how to feel anymore. Like, so apparently the reason he was fired is for, let's call it, like what they've been calling it is unacceptable business conduct. What that unacceptable business conduct is?
That could mean anything.
That could mean anything.
That could be just he's hitting the catering table a little too hard and not leaving enough donuts for everybody. I mean, like, what's going on here? What's really happening?
So there's a lot of like so some of the details that have come out from both him and Disney and Brian Henson, the son of Jim Henson, is that well, it sounded like the backstage Muppet Studios was a mess for a while in terms of what was going on. He has apparently Steve had been giving a lot of notes to the movie studio, but not like notes as in this should be done better. It's in this is crap, I'm not going to do it notes. I'm not going, like, I am the Muppets because Kermit is the Muppets kind of notes. So he was sort of holding a lot of stuff hostage. He still, did things obviously, but it just a lot of things were coming to light that we didn't expect for a person to be, a part of the Muppet Studios, or even Kermit the Frog is happening. There was a lot of like he would have outrageous demands about certain things, and that he had to be kept happy because he refused to have.
He's fucking Kermit the Frog,
yeah. But he would.
By which I mean he's actually Kermit the Frog. He's not actually. You know what I was saying?
Yeah, but he wouldn't have anyone like understudy him, meaning he had to be Kermit. There was no one else, and he would hold down young actors or young Muppeteers. So like a lot of this was coming to light, and it's like finding out one of your heroes. It's never meet your hero scenario. And even Brian Henson came out at one point, I think, saying he felt guilty about not recasting Kermit the moment they sold off the Muppet Studios, and maybe should have warned Disney a little bit beforehand about this. I think he was quoted saying like, you probably should have recasted him. I feel sorry about that because apparently the actor went from he's very good to, oh my God, he's a tyrant. And how do you feel about Kermit the Frog, the tyrant, And it's weird because it's not Kermit. I keep mentioning him as Kermit. It's the actor, but he's been Kermit for so long, they're almost one and the same.
Well, I mean, and it also raises kind of a kind of interesting question that we've kind of been wrestling with a lot lately with all these these revelations about various idols. Joss Whedon, to what degree is one able to separate the art from the artist? Like, okay, yeah, Steve Whitmire behind the scenes, he may have been a douche, but through his work as Kermit the Frog, he's brought so much laughter and happiness to people. Is there a point where we can kind of say, okay, he's earned not so much a get out of jail free card, but we'll acknowledge that he's done crap things, but we're not going to ruin him over it.
Exactly. And that's why I think when the firing sort of happened and a lot of these different revelations sort of came about, Muppet fans and we really didn't know what to think. We didn't know what to say about this. We kind of just wanted, can it be over so we can get Kermit back? We cared about having Kermit around.
Well, the thing is not just with the Muppet Studios, but because remember a couple years ago when the accusations came out against the Elmo puppeteer, things behind the scene, on both the Muppets and Sesame Street, things behind the scenes are kept so under wraps and hush-hush to maintain the illusion of these characters as real actual beings, that when we hear something like this, it's like we've got to now rationalize the fact that these characters are just constructs being manipulated by real human beings. So it's kind of like like you said earlier, we've got to rationalize the fact that it's Steve Whitmire who's having these accusations leveled against him, not Kermit the Frog.
Right. Now, what was it? I think we had a good laugh about this because of the irony that's happening. Is the new puppeteer is Matt Volg, and who played the evil Constantine in Muppets Most Wanted, and in that movie, the evil Constantine pretended to be Kermit the Frog.
Okay, I'm calling it now. The next time Kermit shows up, he's gonna have a mole just conspicuously, hidden underneath some green paint.
No. He has.
No, what's really funny is we were talking about this before the show, and Brian mentioned that the guy who played Constantine was going to be Kermit the Frog, and I had a cross wire. I thought he was talking about the guy who played John Constantine in the Hellblazer TV series. So now I just had this image in my head of Kermit talking to somebody, oh, it says here you're a master of the dark arts. Oh, I really should put in petty dabbler because I do hate to put on airs.
Complete the opposite direction of what we were going for.
Yeah.
But there is the new voice has debuted, I think, as of this recording. It's on their YouTube channel, because unfortunately, I think the Muppet Studios, this just I think also goes that there was a big mess behind that, because they had the Muppets, then Muppets Most Wanted, but they haven't really done anything with the Muppets since. And it sounds like there's, this probably was one of the reasons is they had the
they had the TV show in I think 2015.
Yeah, they did, and that one
don't talk shit, because I loved that series. I was so pissed when it got canceled.
I don't want to talk shit about it, but I just feel like the first couple of episodes was rougher of a series, of a Muppet series, than I really would think about. I never finished the series, unfortunately. I'm shocked it's actually not on DVD right now. So I would like to see it, because I heard it got really good by the end of it, and when it got canceled, people were real pissed about it. Yeah, and that makes sense, especially if it was getting really good, and if they were getting their flow back together.
Oh yeah, it was great. I absolutely loved it. I was disappointed that, spoiler alert, they had Kermit break up with the new girlfriend, because I really wanted to. The thing is, they made a big deal about the fact that he was dating somebody new after he and Piggy broke up, but they never really did much of anything with the relationship. And I was by the end of the first season, they broke them up, and Kermit's back together with Piggy, and I was like, oh God, no! Don't just hit the reset button the instant things start getting slow.
I never agreed with the whole breakup in the first point. But that's just me. They spend so much time. That was a key ingredient of the Muppets is their relationship, and then you're like, oh yeah, by the way, they've broken up now, and then he's dating someone new. I was like, this feels that to me, that felt fake. I would rather the show start with them as that weird celebrity on and off couple kind of that they've always been. But sometimes I am a traditionalist even with it. Hopefully I'll get to see the rest of that season, rest of that show. I'm shocked it's not on DVD or anything like that. I didn't think it did that bad. I mean, it could be worse. It could be Once Upon a Time season 7. Oh,
Ow! Ow!
I'm glad Kat's not here because I don't know if she would agree with me or not.
Oh man, yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad she wasn't here for what we were talking about earlier. The burn that the Adult Swim took against Game of Thrones this weekend.
Oh, right, the writing from 2011 to 2016.
Yeah, so the night of the most recent Rick and Morty episode, which I think was actually on the same night as the Game of Thrones finale. Adult Swim put on one of their bumpers and epitaph said Game of Thrones writing 2011 to 2016. It's like, oh, sick burn.
Yeah, indeed. But hopefully when Cats get back, she'll enlighten us to what happened this season in the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So. But yeah, so that just, wow. But yeah, a new Kermit the Frog. It's like, again, it's so weird because like it's not something that you would think to. It's not something that you would even imagine even happening. Because like again, you've got to get like it'd be like finding out, God forbid, finding out that Mr. Rogers was a crack dealer in his lifetime. Like you see this, you have this image built up of these people and these characters that like when something like that comes out, you've got to reconcile that these are actual human beings with foibles and flaws.
Right, but I mean, to me, it was like eventually like to keep the characters going because they've had to change puppeteers before because of maybe a retiring or death, anything like that. I think to find out the way it happened and how it happened is definitely it was a bit more of a shock to everyone's system and kind of opened up everyone's eyes. I mean, like Gonzo, you were talking about something earlier, but you talk about things that I don't do or play and I get confused. So you might have to explain it to me again. Something happened about modding?
Okay, so one of the E3 show, Bethesda's big thing was they were talking about their content curation system, where they, to put a long story short, they would help people produce and sell mods for Fallout 4 and for Skyrim Special Edition. Well, they rolled it out for Fallout 4 in the last couple of days, and Disaster doesn't even begin to cover it.
So when you say disaster, what kind of disaster are we sort of looking at? Is it doesn't work type of disaster, or things were not promised correctly type of disaster? Like how much of a PR rep do they need?
Well, part of it was that when they made the initial announcement, they didn't give us any real ideas to how the system was going to work. But one of the things they did say was that we're not just going to be putting out mods that you can already get for free elsewhere. We're going to be putting out original content, and promoting original ideas. And then they roll this thing out for Fallout 4, and it's all stuff like paint jobs for your Pip-Boy, new weapons, new skins for your weapons, new armor sets, all stuff that you can get for free elsewhere on like the Mod Nexus. So,
which they said they weren't going to do.
Yeah, and I think there's a YouTuber I follow named Gopher who he does a lot of mod spotlighting for Skyrim and for Fallout games, and I seem to recall in a video that he did this really big long rant about it, where he actually pointed out that one of the mods that they're selling is actually it's a straight lift of a mod from the Nexus that they want like $5 for. And that's the other thing is like, they want like, $4 or $5 for things like, weapon skins or Pip-Boy paint jobs, and a lot of us who've been following Bethesda for a number of years are having very uncomfortable flashbacks to when Oblivion was released. And that was when the DLC thing was just starting to get started. And the first big DLC that they put out was like $10 for horse armor.
I think I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, well, get this. Guess what? One of the first pieces of quote unquote original content for Fallout 4 was that they put out when they rolled this thing out.
Is it $10 horse armor?
Horse power armor.
Are you turning your horse into Iron Man?
Well, that's
I might pay $10.
No, it's like It's like it's a suit of power armor that basically has like horse motifs and shit. But like, come on, we all know what they're calling back to. And like
horse armor.
The thing is like, we're kind of looking at this and we're like, okay, do they not realize that they completely screwed the pooch on this, or are they so aware they've screwed the pooch on it that they're being coyly self-aware about it? It's like, yeah, we know we're not getting this right.
So isn't Bethesda remind me, Bethesda's the game company that releases like buggy games, but no one seems to care.
Yeah, pretty much since Fallout 3, actually even further back than that, since Oblivion. Actually, let's just go whole hog. Pretty much every game Bethesda puts out is bugged up the butt, but that is a lot of that has to do with how ambitious they are. You've got nowadays. Like let's look at Morrowind, which when it was first released was notorious for being extraordinarily difficult to even get running because of how demanding it was. Now we look at it now, it's like, oh, it takes, it requires a processor that doesn't even break a gig. It requires, so little RAM. And so, any off-the-shelf machine can run it. Okay, yeah, any machine now. This game came out in like 2002 when, games weren't near when we were still just coming into the PlayStation 2. We were still working on PS1 era technology. We were just getting into the PlayStation 2 at that point. So yeah, this was a game that was really ambitious and demanding ahead of its time. And the thing is like, yeah, these games are all buggy, but that's because they have to get all of these different scripts and elements to work together. Script, and that scripts is really the operative word there, because that's what most of their games are built around, is this scripting system.
So could it be that maybe that could be finally catching up to them, that we'll release this because no one's really seemed to complain before about our stuff. Maybe they won't complain about this, and then the realization hits them going, oh, we may have made a mistake.
Well, here's the thing. You're kind of going a different direction with this than where I am with this. Because the thing is like the boon that comes with that scripting system is that it's made their games extremely moddable. Pretty much all the Bethesda games. If you go to the Nexus Mod homepage, like right on the start where it lists like the top games that in the order that mods are produced for, the top 7 games with the most mods on the Nexus are all Bethesda titles. You've got Skyrim with like just under 54,000, and then Oblivion at just above half that, and then you got Fallout 4, New Vegas, Fallout 3, Skyrim Special Edition, and Morrowind. Like the top, these games have huge modding communities that, they kind of take the burden of fixing these bugs to make the games more stable, because they want to go in and mod the shit out of it. And the thing is like, we have such, especially with Skyrim, such a creative modding community. There are actually mods out there that are really could more accurately be described as free DLC. Mods like Fallscar or Bruma that add whole new world spaces with fully voiced dialogue, new quests, armor, items, and weapons to find, and new lands to discover. So the sort of fear that's kind of running through the mod community, the Bethesda modding community in the last couple of days is this the first step to Bethesda kind of going censorious and trying to shut down free modding? Because you recall earlier this year we had, or it was either earlier this year or late last year, we had like that thing where Steam tried to do paid modding for Skyrim, and that lasted all of like 6 days because the backlash was just so intense.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's kind of a fear that Bethesda is kind of doing the same thing with this, which I don't think is what's happening. Now, the other thing that's kind of got people kind of really irritated about this is, one of the things I've mentioned on the show is I really want to see Skyrim script extender for Skyrim Special Edition come out, and we've been waiting for that for months and months. So, when they announced the content curation system, it's like, oh, we're going to work alongside mod developers to help create mods. One of the things that a lot of the Skyrim players are saying is like, oh, does that mean that Bethesda will actually step in and help work on SKSE 64, so that we can have that and start making some, really out there and crazy mods. And then the first thing they roll out is a bunch of armor sets and Pip-Boy paint jobs. Like, okay, we're not seeing anything in here that says you actually want to develop original content. You just want to sell, basically decals and shit.
Right, yeah.
So we're kind of also wondering, how committed is Bethesda to actually helping produce new content and new, more ambitious. So, and then of course there's a third camp that's saying that they're just going to try and turn this into, unpaid, or paid or unpaid labor so that they never have to make another game themselves, because shit, this game's been out, Skyrim's been out like 5 years now, and we've not heard a single hint of when the next main Elder Scrolls game is going to be.
Right.
So, basically, this whole curation system has kind of raised more questions than it's answered, and it's got a lot of people going reactionary, going, "Oh, this is the end of this modding." Sky, they're gonna get a monopoly on modding, and a lot of people are saying, "Okay, well, let's wait and see what happens." But like so many things, we don't want to just wait and see what happens. We want to know what's going on now. And the thing is like we have so many more questions than we have answers at this point.
Right. So so are you hoping for a good outcome with this, or where does this go from here?
Honestly, I mean, really the thing that would really win Bethesda over for me on this would be if they were to get in touch with the team working on SKSE 64-bit and help them complete it, because so many of the mods that were made famous on regular Skyrim require Skyrim script extender, and cannot work without it. So I would say the thing that would really win me over was let's see Bethesda actually reach out to the community, find out what mods the community wants to see made, what kind of content they'd like to see, and then work to make that happen, rather than just going, okay, all right, here's a neat set of power armor that looks cool. Let's take it off the Nexus and sell it for $5 on our website.
Right, exactly. So, and it also kind of feels it could backlash in the terms of, like how does one say, I mean, there's obviously modders out there who've probably have signed work and stuff like that. So does it count as theft if Bethesda takes it, even though they're using Bethesda assets? So it sounds like this is also going to open a whole legal shitstorm they may not want to get a part of.
Yeah, but I don't believe that it's going to be the end of free modding. I really don't. The community, not just on the mod Nexus, but on other communities, it's especially for Skyrim, it's just so huge and so active. There's no way you're going to be able to pull a plug on that. There isn't. I mean, 54,000 mods. What does that tell you about how about the community that's behind this? Even if Bethesda totally screws the pooch on this and decides to just shut down the curation system, there's still going to be a modding community. You're never going to be able to get rid of that.
Right.
So,
all right. Man, for something like what we thought about, like, oh, there's not a lot going on. There seems to be a lot going on.
Well, a lot's going on because there's not a lot going on. It's kind of a paradox.
That's very true. Like, just working our way through it, man. We're just trying to survive this crazy, crazy world.
Yep. And that seems like a good place to kind of cap off this episode is with that, because we are running kind of a bit long here. So that's all about all the time we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. We'll see you next week when what is on the rotation, Brian?
Well, it's gonna be possibly a bit of a surprise here. I do know we wish to speak about the Marvel's Defender series that came out on Netflix very recently. We also wish to discuss a little bit about this Game of Thrones season that came out. Two sort of TV-esque or semi-TV-esque episodes coming up. We'll keep you updated to see which ones we'll be discussing. I hope it's Marvel Defenders, but hey, that's just me. I'm biased.
Well, see, one doesn't require you to catch up on 7 years of television.
Well, that's very true. What do you mean you haven't been watching it? I've been busy.
All right. So anyway, so that's all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Brian.
We'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.